conversation will be about Clint Eastwood's American Sniper. American Sniper was adapted to screen by Jason Hill. The film is based on the autobiographical story of Chris Kyle, played by Bradley Cooper, an acclaimed American Navy SEAL sniper. We follow him in this film through his SEAL training, through his 4 tours overseas during the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, and follow him through the troubles he has in civilian life when he returns in between tours. This film is poised to become one of the highest grossing films of 2014. But I think one of the key elements in discussing this film is the theme of honor. You have Chris Kyle, who's acclaimed as a sniper. Many call him the legend. Many of his colleagues in the SEALs call him a legend just for his efficacy in his job. And on one of the opposing sides, you have the sniper Mustafa, who's also acclaimed as someone who's quite deadly and efficient at what he does in his job. But both of those two snipers, we seem to see them on screen having trouble with accepting that role of being the legend or being the all-star. So how do you think Kyle and Mustafa kind of make peace with the fact that what they do has a lot, they are getting a lot of respect, but is it necessarily deserved or honored respect? Should they be honored for doing a job that is effectively, killing with a lot of accuracy, opposing military forces?
Well, of course, there's going to be a lot of respect from people who serve in the military because they're doing a lot to serve the ultimate goal of protecting soldiers on the ground and making sure that they achieve their goals on the battlefield. Say what you want about war, but that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I think it's not glorified in this case, especially with Kyle. He doesn't glorify the stance that when others are counting, you have this many kills, he doesn't kind of do it. So he still understands that it's a duty. It shouldn't be glorified. The casualties of war shouldn't be, glorified. He shouldn't hey, I did this. It was his duty. And he repeatedly says that he does it for his country. He would serve for his country. So he doesn't try to glorify his stance as a hero or the honor he deserves. He kind of plays it in character. Obviously, Bradley Cooper has gone through a physical transformation for this role. Famously, he said he ate 8,000 calories a day, put on 30-plus pounds of muscle. With a scene where he's actually deadlifting those tires, he actually did that in real life. So he's gone through a physical transformation, but I think the key to his performance here is obviously the silence of when he's at home with his family and how he's still disturbed by the elements of war that kind of gear him up when he's overseas.
Now, what I found interesting about that portrayal is how much is said by him not saying things. It may sound cliche, but you kind of get the sense that war has affected him, but at the same time, it hasn't really changed him because he was definitely motivated to join the military to make a difference against he perceived to be threats against the U.S. So he was still keeping his mind on that. He just kind of became more consumed by that, of course, being on the front lines and seeing all the death and destruction on both sides of the case. So I found it pretty interesting that it wasn't just a portrayal where you saw a happy-go-lucky guy at the beginning of the movie to a dark, twisted thing you see by the middle part. So I liked how the character stayed the same, but you could see how war was still affecting him at the same time.
Absolutely, and it was the consistency that you liked. Even when he met his wife, Taya, played by Sienna Miller, in that first scene, he's got consistency. He knows what his missions are in life. It's from that scene we get with his father about if you're able to protect somebody, you do it. So there's consistency in his character, but then also you kind of see a great deal of depth in what, war and the raw emotions you feel, losing his colleagues, achieving such glory within the military that, at the end of the film, during the closing credits, that they show how many people came out in support of him in his memorial. I think one key fabric of this year's nominees for Best Picture is that a lot of them are based on real stories, but not totally universally known stories, I think. And so that's why I know personally, the title card effect at the end of the films. I know you had an abject reaction watching Imitation Game when you read the title card. Even this film here, I never knew the circumstances of Chris Kyle's death. I just knew he was not alive anymore. So maybe you wanted to talk about it's probably a more successful year of title card effects at the end, and do you still value the title card sequence at the end of the film to kind of describe where characters are?
Yeah, and I think in this movie it was kind of an awkward situation because it was relating back to his date of death, February 2nd, 2013. So that's 2 years before the wide release of the movie. That's it. So it's different in the sense that there still is a bit of the story to be told. Obviously, his that was the Marine who eventually did kill him is just standing trial right now, like while we're recording this. So it's different in that sense, and I think that's the reason it had to be included, because it's this movie. It pretty much culminates the entire Iraq War through Chris Kyle's tours in Iraq and the aftermath of that, and to be frank, for his family, the unfortunate aftermath of that.
No, exactly. This film is helmed by Clint Eastwood, someone who's known for their great efficiency when they're making films. He's known for doing his job in one shot. So let's kind of abstractly talk about how Clint Eastwood kind of handles a war movie to, say, other current or modern directors. Catherine Bigelow, she's had a couple recently. What makes an Eastwood war movie different than, say, any of the contemporaries currently?
I think Eastwood's war movies are... He just shows war as it is. He's more likely a director to do that. I mean, obviously we remember his projects from 2006 where not only did he show the American side of Iwo Jima, he also showed the Japanese side. So that, like, he painstakingly takes his effort to not appear to take sides. And this movie has definitely got a lot of criticism for taking a side, but by nature of being a biopic, it was going to happen anyway. But I think another thing this movie, I just want to briefly touch upon before passing it over, is how it shows the military as not this fine, well-oiled machine all the time. How there are things that, slight mistakes here and there that soldiers make while on duty, and how they try to fix that up on the spot, just like you would for any other job, so to speak. So that's also an interesting aspect of how it shows that the military is overall has like a strong, strict leadership, of course, but there are still a lot of mistakes, not just from the top, which you don't really see in this movie, but also just smaller mistakes on the ground floor.
Yeah, and I think the key scenes where we see Chris Kyle's leadership are the scenes where he's kind of brainstorming and doing things because they're needed. When he said, "I'm no longer needed on the roof here. We have to raid houses at, whatever they had, 10 an hour, and I'm better served there." So when he kind of puts himself on the street, it's a different kind of perspective of we have as Chris Kyle and why he has garnered so much respect while he was serving and after his untimely death. I think going back to Eastwood, I think he doesn't make judgments in war films. He portrays it pretty plainly. So some could say that's shorthanded and he's taking the easy way out. But I think in some way he puts it on the screen and it's for others to judge. He knows how to put a film, direct it, provide the suspense, the action, but he doesn't kind of go into this introspective of why and where and when beyond what is necessary. So that's what I kind of think is the main difference of an Eastwood film compared to some others. We're almost nearing the end of this episode of Inside the Academy Studio, and like always, we end with certain questions. So I'm going to ask, what was your favorite moment in American Sniper?
I think my favorite moment in American Sniper was, I think once again, I think people did know that it was a slight fictionalization, but it was a fictionalization that worked for the character's benefit. It's a scene where a child picks up the rocket launcher, and he just goes like, drop it, come on, just drop it. And it's just like well into the movie where he's really deep into his like third or fourth tour of in Iraq, and it kind of creates that connection between you and how the character's feeling at that moment. And I thought it was a good way of getting into a character's mind.
No, that was a great scene. I'm surprisingly not going to go with any of the scenes overseas, but I'm going to go with the meet-cute meeting between Chris Kyle and Sienna Miller's Taya Renee, because I think it stayed true to both characters. You know, we're introduced to Taya. She kind of has a checkered past with military personnel, but Chris Kyle he knows what he wants. He kind of clearly states, hey, if you're not into someone who's willing to serve their country, then obviously we're not worthy of having a drink together. And personally, I like meet cutes anyway, but I think this kind of does enough to kind of establish the relationship where even later on it's more about the grief and the PTSD that you kind of understand why these two people are together just based on that initial meeting. Least favorite moment. My least favorite moment is going to be the scene between Ryan Biggles' job, played by Jake McDorman, and Chris Kyle. They meet up again. Biggles has suffered a severe injury. He's losing his eyesight. And the exchange they have, it's kind of one of the only places where both guys are very satisfied with what they've done in terms of the kill count. So it's self-serving, but then also factually, the circumstances were different. So it didn't sit with me. I don't think I needed to see another scene where, Chris Kyle needs more motivation. It kind of been established that he's fairly motivated to do the right thing in his mind and to kind of go there and help American troops. What about your least favorite moment?
And my least favorite moment is kind of like that final showdown between the two snipers. It was a good setup action-wise for that scene and was well shot. But then there's that moment where the bullet goes into bullet time. Like, for a movie that is so realistic or pains to be so grounded, to have that moment where he kills Mustafa with a slow motion bullet, as you see on screen, it just took me out of that. It just took me out of what should have been a much more raw experience, and it was a lot more flashy than it should have been.
Okay, the last thing we do is word association. So when you think American Sniper, what do you think of?
I think of Marines.
And I think of Punisher. We had the Punisher graphic novel, and then we had the fixture, the Punisher fixture on a lot of military vehicles as the movie went on. So when we think of American Sniper, we think of Marines and Punisher. Thank you for listening to this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Thank you.